Speaking of Justin Simmons, as we were talking about him, what are the chances he resigns with this new GM? What about Von Miller? What about Shelby Harris? So kind of asking about all three guys. You mentioned the RFAs earlier, and that's obviously one of the big decisions they have to make right off the bat with Philip Lindsay and Alexander Johnson and Tim Patrick. But yes, Justin Simmons, that's probably the number one thing that has to be decided. Shelby Harris is in the mix there. And then, Von Miller. That's some pretty massive decisions. And it comes back to something we were discussing before, right at the beginning of the show. Just like there's a lot of people worried right off the bat on, oh, my gosh, this new GM is going to come in, a completely different philosophy with the draft and so on and so forth. And it's like, hey, listen, they've got some major decisions to make about their own roster before they even get there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you do need to go and check. Like we talked about the RFAs, right? You got to make how and who are you going to tender there? Because who can you afford to lose? Who can you afford to keep at those prices? Who are you willing to let test the market and go if they need to? Tim Patrick, unfortunately, probably falls in that original round tender category, just based on the depth at wide receivers that you have. So you probably tender Lindsey and Alexander Johnson at second round tenders. And then you start to look around at the other options that you've got here. You do. You need to figure out Shelby Harris. You gonna pay him? Justin Simmons, he's going to get paid by somebody. Is it going to be here? I mean, that's homegrown. So there's a lot of pieces and a lot of parts that you need to look at before you even get to the draft function of this. And to be honest with you, a new general manager coming in probably isn't going to clean house on scouts and down roster guys until after the draft, because you've already started the momentum on this. And this is a COVID year on top of this.
Mm-hmm. And certainly you also have to believe that Vic Fangio's voice in this matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oftentimes it isn't necessarily up to the head coach, but in this case, you're giving some power to the head coach to help select the next GM of this team. So I'd have to imagine if Vic Fangio is a guy pounding the table to keep Justin Simmons is staying.
Yeah, and he will be. I mean, well, I say he will be. Vic Fangio will be pounding the table, and not that Justin definitely be staying. I think as the new general manager, you have to come in and weigh how you're going to do this. Do you tag Justin Simmons again, knowing that he may not play on it? Like Justin was willing and vocal about playing on the tag the first time.
Right. But the second time might not necessarily be that case, and it officially maybe burns some bridges there.
I would suggest that if they tag him and don't reach a deal, that Justin will never come back to Denver. I would suggest that would be the way you need to think about this.
Yeah, and the tag is, listen, players have different feelings on the tag. Some players are like, good, pay me the
Kirk
guaranteed
Cousins
money.
Was like, cha-ching.
Yeah, I'll take two of those. Thank you.
And everybody else is like, I hate this, you know, whatever. But you stand to make more money on it. If you can get tagged twice and then get the big deal afterward, you stand to make more money. But it can be stressful. I mean, you think about this, we're thinking about it in different terms. You're talking about a guy who's got to feed his family for life. Yeah, based on the money that he's going to make over the next 6 years.
Right. It did seem at the end of his press conference today with the media, it was about 17 minutes long, and he got there at the end and started thanking the media, and seemingly as though he was headed out the door. I wouldn't read too much into that.
Yeah, honestly, don't read too much into that yet.
There's still things in motion that, Justin, they want him back. Like, they really do want him back, because I think with John Elway and Vic Fangio staying here, that is going to make the Broncos want to make that work out.
The theme of running it back seems a bit defeated if you're going to let your best player walk.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, in the end, that's just what it boils down to me. And I'll say, we know a little bit from each side of the house on this, from the Broncos and from Justin. I think that they weren't that far apart last year.
I remember we were covering this because we understood kind of from both sides of the house why it ultimately didn't get done. Both sides, I'd say more so the Broncos moved, but there was a concern about what COVID was going to mean to the league year, about what the salary cap implications were going to be, and the Broncos just simply didn't want to be underwater. And they knew they had the backstop of a second franchise tag if they absolutely had to use it. Hopefully they don't. And it looks like the salary cap might ultimately be okay. It might come down a little bit. Certainly probably isn't going to go up. But I don't know if it's going to make the 175.
Yeah, you got the rollover, so you got a little bit of cushion there. That's going to help. And you do have some flexibility. A general manager is going to have to come in and say, okay, are we keeping A.J. Bouye? Are we keeping Jarrell Casey? What are we going to do about Von Miller's option? What are we going to do with Juwan James, who's coming back off the opt-out? Are we just going to eat that? Or are we going to, what are we going to do? And so there's a couple of Kareem Jackson. What are we going to do with Kareem Jackson, who's in the third year of a 3-year deal with no guaranteed money in it? So there's some flexibility on that defense to do some things. You're just going to have to figure out what it is that you're going to do.